everybody got plenty to eat. Thank you guys for coming this morning. You guys know Brother Tony Seward's going to come and share a few words with us this morning. Testimony. We're thankful for him being willing to do that. As we mentioned, we'd like for everybody to be attentive and give Tony your attention. It's tough getting up to speak. I know a lot of times some people don't show up, but I know a lot of people that spoke on a lot and are still nervous in these situations. So I'm sure Tony's nervous this morning. But we're thankful for Tony and Seward, Tony and Susan coming to be with us and joining our church. We're thankful to have them with us. They add a lot. I've heard a lot of compliments on Susan's teaching and just her zeal for the Lord and serve the Lord. I'm sure Tony shares the same thing. So we're looking forward to what he has to share with us this morning. So Tony, you'll come share with us what the Lord has for us this morning. And let's open up with a word of prayer for us. Oh, Lord, we thank you again for this day. Thank you for loving us, for blessing us, Lord, for this opportunity to come to fellowship this morning, Lord. Lord, thank you for Brother Tony, Lord, for his willingness to come and serve, Lord. We just pray you calm him, Lord, and put on his heart what you would have for us to do today, Lord. Just thank you for his faithfulness and willingness to share with us today, Lord. And Lord, for all those, Lord, who just need to hear this word this morning, Lord, we just pray that each and every one of us would apply to our lives, Lord. Pray to be with our worship service. Come, Lord, for Brother Barry, for what he brings to us here, for what he has for us today, Lord, that we may take all this, Lord, and we may go out into this world, Lord, to be a better servant for you. We ask this things in your name.
When I went to college, it was suggested that I write down my testimony because I have a tendency to go off on rabbit trails. So I'll try not to be too robotic and looking down too much, but I just want to stay on track. My story here. I titled this, Someone Saved Me from Myself. I'll explain why in a second. Again, hello, I'm Tony Seward, a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and a fairly new member here to Mountain Springs. I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict who struggles with the fear of what's going on in the country in the future. I was addicted to drugs and alcohol for 17 years. My sobriety date is June 24th, 2005. My path to recovery began a couple of months before this date in my bedroom after a night of using. I was living with my father, and at this time, I had a vision from God. It woke me up, and I walked down this hallway to confess to my father, and then I called the cocaine hotline that morning. I'll go into further detail later on. Like I said, I titled this, Someone Saved Me from Myself. I wish I could take credit for this title, but I took it from a famous heavy metal rock star who titled his book, who was also struggling with pretty much everything I've struggled with. And I really like the title, so that's why I'm using it. If I had to choose one or two words to summarize my life before Christ, it would be never enough. Nothing was ever enough. This is how I felt about myself. You'll probably hear this throughout this story. I'm going to try and break this up quickly into like 4 parts and move quickly through those parts because I know we have about 30 minutes or so. I tried to chop this up where recovery homes. I'm trying to gear it more towards an audience like this, so I'll try not to be too descriptive of glorifying, the drugs and alcohol, because it's what I struggled with. And so I'm going to try and talk about my upbringing, the old me, my experiences and changes me trying to find recovery, the new me, and briefly some outreach work which changed my life. So my upbringing, I was born in a middle-class family in Newport, Rhode Island, back in 1971. My family consisted of a mother, father, and 2 sisters. My mother, a housewife, was a devoted wife who tried to be the perfect Catholic wife and mother, but we were far from that. It was just an image that we tried to portray to the neighborhood. She forced me to be an altar boy, and I hated that. My father, a firefighter, hated going to mass too. He also concocted a plan for him and I to bond, where he pitched the idea to my mother where we'll go and we'll bond. The plan was have me run up the side door, grab the little bulletin, that's our evidence, and then we went. Got caught. Honestly, looking back now, I mean, I had a pretty good childhood. There was no reason for me to become an addict. You know, I had my typical fights with my 2 older sisters. Pretty much stayed clear of one another. They would say that my mother spoiled me and I could do nothing wrong. Now, I would admit they were right. I got away with so much and got whatever I wanted. Yes, I was spoiled. I was what they called back then a mama's boy. I could do no wrong. Mom protected me from Dad's wrath. I can honestly say this led me to a very self-centered, selfish, and prideful life. However, these character defects only surfaced at home. In school, in my social life, I was very shy, empty, and had no self-esteem. I always felt unworthy and like an outcast in middle school. No matter what crowd I tried to join, I never felt like I belonged. My best friend Tom, who also had a firefighter for a father that was a firefighter, we were best friends since about the age of 2. His grandfather had a little lawnmower repair shop, and that's where I remember him and I sneaking in and grabbing our first can of beer. At the age of 14, my dad started giving me a can of beer for every holiday. I remember I loved the feeling. Leading into high school, I was known as a good athlete. I was never picked last for any team. I was pretty successful at every sport I tried, but still lacked self-esteem. This led me to be a people pleaser in order to fit in, including any cliquers that would take me in. The group of friends in my neighborhood became boring to me, and I really sought after what came out to be what we call the burnouts of the neighborhood or the area. And I also wanted a girlfriend really badly. My mom had other plans. She wanted me to be a priest. So she wanted me to stay away from girls, in other words. She dressed me in the worst clothes imaginable. My glasses were Coke bottle thick. And she fed me as much as she could, thinking that if I was a really big person, that would deter any girls from wanting to get to know me. She succeeded in that plan until about my junior year. I went to Dad to help me out, thinking material things would help me, guitars and skateboards and anything I wanted, he bought me. Mom started to join in, sneaking me some money with a part-time job at the library. This continued to feed my self-centeredness. My sisters did not receive the same monetary help, which led to jealousy and resentment. The Burnouts finally accepted me into their group, and my friend Rob introduced me to, pot or marijuana and social drinking. These new activities started happening on a every weekend basis, and then eventually snuck into the middle of the week during high school. I sank so low that I experimented with cocaine at that time. I still only had girls as friends. They would call me for hours, but it never progressed into a dating relationship. Through my high school years, Mom had 2 cancer scares. The cancer was removed the first time, but she had to go back to the doctor regularly for checkups. Just as I turned 21, around Christmas time, my mom went back to the doctor complaining about some back pain. It turned out that she had been diagnosed with cancer of the pancreas and liver. I turned 21 in February of 1992, and she passed away March 21st at the age of 56. My mom made my sisters promise to watch after me, because she knew that this would rock me to the core. I chose to deny that this was happening. As my mom passed away, I barely spent 5 minutes with her on a daily basis because I couldn't handle the truth. She understood and would actually encourage me to go find something else to do. The day my mom died, I drank an entire liter of gin, and I didn't even feel it. At this point, a hatred for I had already been opened up to that world, world of Satan. I couldn't understand why a loving God would take such a religious woman. It didn't make any sense to me. How serial killers would live their entire life in prison, and I didn't understand why she had to go. This is why my recreational use of drugs and alcohol turned into a full-blown addiction. I felt empty with no purpose in life, and I consumed in life, and everything I consumed was never enough. My dad remarried and moved to Pennsylvania. My stepmother was nice in the beginning, but she had ulterior motives. She knew I was lost, and within 6 months I went from 265 pounds with really no muscle tone to 195 pounds with way above average muscle. I also saw the truth about my stepmother and her motives, so I moved out. Found a good job and got my first apartment. This is when I met my first girlfriend, Kim. We lived in sin for 5 years, hosted parties on weekends, and sometimes during the work week too. I was a functioning user of substances during those 5 years, but drove me back to hardcore addiction after we ended our relationship. At this point, 9/11 just happened. I lived with a friend for several more months while formulating my plan to move back to Rhode Island. And we drank and used drugs daily. The weekends were a non-stop party from Friday night to Sunday night. This is when cocaine came back into my life. We had as many as 50 to 100 people in our house, and there were people sleeping everywhere. It was a complete zoo. In 2002, I moved back to Rhode Island and moved in with my middle sister. I temporarily stopped using cocaine because of the move, but it soon found me again. At this point, my sister was also an alcoholic, and we were perfect for each other. Codependent behavior was definitely present. I quickly found one of my high school burnout friends, Jeff, and we hung out daily getting drunk. Unfortunately, I ran into a guy that I used cocaine with in high school, and he turned me back on to crack, and then it was off to the races again. My life turned into hell on earth. I started dating a girl that I met through Jeff's girlfriend, but it only lasted a couple weeks. In 2003, on Good Friday night, I came home from work and started drinking my typical liter of hard liquor, and I noticed a blinking light on the house telephone, which indicated there was a voicemail. I played the message, and this is how this girl informed me of the breakup. After about an hour of stewing, and I finished this liter, I took a shower and went to the bar to find her to give her a piece of my mind. She wasn't at our typical hangout at the bar. I had other friends there, and they could see that I was upset, so we ended up drinking together. Finally, I realized I had gone too far and I needed to go home right away. However, halfway home of this 2-mile drive, I blacked out, hit a stone wall, ripped down a telephone pole. I totaled the first car I ever bought with my own money. I only had the title for 10 days. The police showed up and asked me if I wanted to contest their claim of obvious signs of drinking and driving. I said no and just turned around and got handcuffed. I received the breathalyzer about an hour after the accident, and I still blew a .286. 0.08. I was more than 3.5 times the legal limit. The judge threw all the punishments that he could because I had never been in trouble, but certainly not the first time I ever drove drunk. People who are this far over the limit have a serious problem. And he was right. I was 32 years old and in serious legal trouble. I was officially deemed an alcoholic. Coincidentally, at the same time, my father had planned a trip to come and see my sisters and I. While discussing the plans for this trip to my sisters, my dad was informed about the trouble I was in. My father recently lost his second wife to cancer and was living in South Carolina. And was looking to take a break and go on vacation. He came to visit and talk with me in the living room of my sister's house, where I was living at the time. Occasionally, my dad would throw out the name Jesus into our conversations. This struck me as odd. He would encourage me to skip church with him when my mom was alive. Unbeknownst to me, my dad had discussions with his fireman friends and these friends and their sons, and there was supposedly a hit out on my life because a drug buddy of mine was getting drugs fronted in my name, and the debt was piling up. After this discussion, my dad was heading out the door, and I found a way to con him again. I asked him for $50 so I could have one last gathering with my friends to say goodbye. My plan really was to call my drug dealer as soon as he left the house. Dad thought I needed a change of scenery and friends to with him. His house was empty and could use some company. The requirements were that I attended AA and go to church. He left the house and I called my drug dealer and spent the remaining $10 on a cheap bottle of liquor and cigarettes. Dad showed up the next morning with an enclosed U-Haul attached to the back of his truck, and we were off to South Carolina, but we stopped at the courthouse to settle up my fines and restitutions. I was in rough shape that morning because I didn't get any sleep and I was hungover. He let me sleep for a while. When I woke up, he began talking about Jesus again. And at the moment of, after a moment of chit chat, I'm wondering, who is this guy? This isn't the father I remember. After a while, I asked if I could just put my headphones on and get some more sleep. We made it to South Carolina, and I started all those requirements. All went well for 9 months. At an AA meeting, I met my best friend, Scott. He took an odd interest in me, and he asked if we could hang out. After a month, he started talking about accepting Jesus and led me through the sinner's prayer. It was only words to me. It didn't change my heart. I was fired from a job at Lowe's, working there for less than a year because I didn't go back and report back after a dinner break. Instead, I made a date with my old friends, drugs and alcohol. When I went back to work the following morning, my things were cleaned out of my locker, and a note told me to report to the manager's office. On the way home, Scott and he met me at my father's house. During this conversation, Scott gave me an ultimatum. If I don't tell my dad, he was going to. I finally confessed to my dad that I was more than an alcoholic. I was also a drug addict. My father locked me in his house for a month and wouldn't let me out of his sight. Believe it or not, I even had my drug dealer dropping drugs off in the middle of the night. Over the years of using, I had many thoughts of committing suicide, but the last couple months before my sobriety, these thoughts were frequent, and the voice was very loud in my head. However, it was my fear of going to hell that scared me from following through. During my final night of using drugs and alcohol, I remember I was about to take my last hit of crack, and I dropped the pipe on the sink in the bathroom. And I lifted my head up into the mirror, and I saw a face of death. I couldn't see the color in my eyes or anything. That scared me. Prior to that night, I had nightmares of my own funeral with an open casket, and I could see my family crying and kneeling before me. That this was God trying to reach me through dreams and warn me. When I saw the face of death in the mirror, I ran out of the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed and cried out to God. A thought came into my head, just bring it to the light. And I didn't know what that meant. But I walked down the hallway and confessed to my father. With crocodile tears streaming down his face, he said he was ashamed of me, and he would kick me out if he could, but I would end up dead. And he couldn't live with that. Seeing the tears and hearing those words, I would have rather he punched me in the face than say that. I was finally broken. I left his room at 6 a.m. and called the cocaine hotline. They connected me with a Christian recovery home called Faith Home. When I arrived at Faith Home, I noticed 3 huge crosses off in the background of the property. My father drove me to the facility, which consisted of a big, huge building, several trailers, a metal garage, and a house. This house is where who we called Mama. She started the place. This is where Mama lived. Mama and her husband lived in this home and started Faith. I never met her husband. He passed away in the 90s. I checked in. Both me and my suitcase were. Then I had to do a drug screening and a breathalyzer, and thank God I passed. When I was being asked the intake questions, this big guy, Billy, says out of the blue that I had an attitude problem. He's going to fix that. Of course, I was offended. I got angry, but kept my comments to myself. Billy said under his breath, as I was walking out of his office, that he had the job just for me. And And on the way, I noticed these guys who were standing there and hanging out. These guys were multi-ethnicities. They were just getting along like they were more than just friends. They were like brothers. The camaraderie was just struck me odd and made an everlasting impression on me. They allowed me a couple days to get adjusted before I had to start work for them at the beginning of the week. They had a huge garden, large areas to mow, landscape needs, a thrift store, a cleaning laundry crew, and they even had farm animals to take care of. My second night there, we went to this, what I come to find out, a gospel church. I didn't know much about it. They were hooting and hollering, blurting out when the pastor was talking, running up and down the aisles, banging their tambourines. And I said to myself, what is going on? This is odd to me. Needless to say, I freaked out going to Catholic Mass. You know, the frozen chosen, the cross, and you get up on your knees and you sit quiet in your pew. My mom would, you know. I never wanted to be in. I was missing their glow, passion, and sense of belonging. If I was truly broken, I would want something different in life. At 10 o'clock road and a full moon overhead, it was extremely humid, and my salvation moment came. I had this laminated card with the sinner's prayer in my pocket, and I took it out. Even though I couldn't see it too well, all there was a full moon overhead. I fell to my knees and cried out to God with my face to the ground. Through my tears, I surrendered my life to Christ and asked Him to take control of my heart and my life. I don't know how long it was, but when I got up on this blazing hot night, a cold air went down my back, which gave me chills, and the hairs on my body just completely stood up. This backpack of heavy burden fell off, and the straps of addiction were broken. The new week arrived, and Billy, the facility manager, who identified this attitude problem, assigned me to the cleaning crew. Immediately, I was offended and had a big attitude problem. The cleaning crew didn't care much about each other, and we were quite a bunch of misfits. I spoke up after about a week, and I told them I decided to take this position very serious, and pitched the idea that we should take this assignment with more dedication, and I issued a challenge. I asked if anyone would join me and if they were on board, and most were on board. After that day, we were a new crew working to work as if we're working unto the Lord, not for man. The facility looked so good that Mom recognized us at the next spaghetti dinner graduation night. She said the place had not looked this great since it started in the 70s. Being assigned to the cleaning crew was the best thing that could have ever happened. It helped me chip away on my pride, my arrogance, and my selfishness. With a week to go, I was sitting in the garden amongst those street crosses, reading my Bible. I still had a question for God that weighed heavy on me. Why didn't you save my mom from cancer? But I believe I received a response that day. Our thoughts come from the flesh, from Satan, or from God. What I heard was, what makes you think I didn't save her? Yeah. She loved me with all her heart. And she's here with me. You are the one that needed to save me. She had to go so you and your father would find me on your own. I finally had peace and clarity about losing her, and anger left me. I know I will see my mom again. On the final day, Dad came to visit for my graduation. I was asking him for something more to read than just my Bible. He said, I don't know, you need to ask a pastor and get some advice. I didn't realize, but I was asking for a daily devotion. As the speaker was preparing for the graduation night, he came by where I was sitting in the front row. He said that he felt the Lord just tell him to go out to his car and get his newly written devotion that was on its way to the nearest Christian bookstores for sale. What? How did he know that? That was confirmation that our God is interested in his people. No matter the size of the request, he knew my desire to draw closer to him. He didn't want to say no or wait on that request. God is good all the time. When I got home to Dad's place, I was looking forward to going to church the next morning and hanging out with Scott. I called him on the way home and asked him to meet me at my dad's house to help sanitize my room from any temptation and the old music I used to listen to, which could lead me back to my former partying days, any pornography or any drug paraphernalia. They all went in the trash. From my experiences at Faith Home, I took away 2 scriptures that meant a lot to me. Everybody knows these. They're pretty common. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ, for which he gives me the strength. And another one that really meant a lot to me was Isaiah 40:31. Those who put their hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings of eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not become faint. Well, the new me was transformed. I enjoyed going to Christian concerts and going to church. Something happened to me. I remember going to my first Chris Tomlin concert, and there was nothing like singing along with thousands of brothers and sisters. I remember when it was over, I felt like I had been on 20 roller coasters. It felt like it was blown backwards. I spent a lot of money on drugs and alcohol. It was the best $25 I've ever spent. The counselor at Faith Home recommended I go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I did 120. And NA again, but they did not want me to mention Jesus in my sharing. I knew, that's when I knew I needed to find a new program, and I found Seward Recovery. However, I met a girl at AA just before I left, and soon entered into a sinful relationship. I couldn't believe I did that again. Scott sensed a change in me and began to fast and pray for me. When she ended the relationship, depression, loneliness, and sadness returned. Scott was amazed that I didn't return to drugs and alcohol. Every day he would call me and ask to go out and do something. He knew I was in a battle, and I didn't quite know how to use the armor of God that is at our fingertips. I was able to fill this void with Christ through the power, I believe, in Scott's prayers and the Holy Spirit still glowing within me. My middle sister surprised me on my birthday by paying for an eHarmony account. In a few months, I came across a girl that said she enjoyed watching football with her father. I had to find out more. We contacted each other through instant messaging several times. I offered my phone number if she wanted to call. My phone rang during a Saturday night's men's Bible study. I told the guys I had to get this call. I went outside on the front stoop and we chatted, and the rest was history. I asked Susan if she would be okay with a guy who had tattoos. That didn't bother her because it was what's in my heart that mattered more than what's on my arms. Also, our past was polar opposites. She quoted 2 Corinthians 5:17, basically paraphrasing, if once you've accepted Christ, that old person is gone, you're a new person has begun. When that topic came up, we also were thankful when that topic came up, we were thankfully on the same page. Our relationship progressed quickly, and we decided to get married within 6 months, and I moved to Charlotte. My best friend, Scott, was my best man, and we still talk frequently and see each other once or twice, still to this day. For me, showing up 45 minutes before a meeting and setting up chairs was an important part of my recovery because the root of addictions was selfishness. Being selfless is critical. I didn't miss one meeting for 2 years and received a special medallion for service work as recognition for my dedication. However, the church closed their meeting for a couple years, but eventually it would come back. They're meeting to this day. For the first several years in CR, I was upset that I wasn't asked to do my testimony, but a sponsor pointed out that maybe my motives weren't pure, and maybe I was looking for all the praise. After praying and meditating on this criticism, I can honestly say at CR, and found my passion doing the audio and the video and picking the MP3 songs when we did. Many times I declined giving my testimony because of my concern about taking God's glory, my fear of public speaking, and just flat out being lazy. I can go on and on with all my current struggles, but I just want it's the fear of the future and the direction of the country. This fear has been consuming my mind, corrupting my attitude, filling me with anger at times, robbing my joy, and diverting me from my relationship with Christ. I'm not going to go all political right now, but I can just say, just keep praying. I know God promises to provide for his children that a bird doesn't even worry about, worry about the worm, because it will be provided to the bird the next day. I'm not sleeping well at all. I'm consumed with fear, and I constantly feed my mind with information. So I'm in the know what's going on in the world, but this also feeds the fear. I need Lord to help me find balance with this. I'm just going to quickly talk a tad about outreach. I put hours and hours of thought, meditation into my life and the roots of my issues, problems, and addictions. All these efforts have revealed a common characteristic flaw, and that is selfishness. I can remember back after my honeymoon phase of my new life in Christ and attending Celebrate Recovery, when I was feeling down and depressed, a wise man at one of these groups approached me and said, "Stop focusing so much on you and start thinking more about serving others. The key to changing a selfish-driven person is being selfless and serve." He also introduced me to an acrostic word, J-O-Y, joy. The J is Jesus first, others for the O, others second, and Y is you put yourself last. This is the happiest I've been in my life when I truly practice this principle. I have done several local missions, but one that had the most impact was going with Scott on Saturday mornings to once a month to an orphan's home for boys. These boys' parents had died from overdoses, or their parents were in prison for drug offenses. and the other family members wanted nothing to do with these children. Scott and I would get paid on Friday, and we would go and buy from 60 to 100 egg muffins and go and have a monthly study with the kids, feed them, and just go outside and play with them, play football and stuff. Giving up my time and money was a big challenge for me. My only mission trip out of the country was to El Carmen, Mexico, to help a church build a greenhouse to help support themselves. I met a bunch of nice people that truly appreciated our help, and my favorite thing was to have a pocket full of candy to give out to the children. These are a couple examples of hopefully encouraging you to get motivated and to serve God's kingdom. To be fair, I haven't done much here yet at Mountain Springs. I've had a bad year coping with the passing of my mother-in-law. My friend. And a back surgery at the beginning of this year. I'll confess, I'm still very angry. Which also feeds into my concern for the country and the corruption. Before I say something I regret, I'm going to just move on to the closing. I'm very grateful for our conversation we had in his office last July. I felt like we were friends for years. He gave me his personal cell phone number, and that meant a lot. To this day, I still listen to his podcast while I'm at work. I hope and pray that my testimony didn't come off arrogant, prideful, or stealing God's glory. I want to be clear, this isn't about me. This is all about God. It's about what God did for me, what I could not do for myself. I just had to be broken, realize I couldn't beat this on my own, and just ask Jesus to come into my heart and change me and be the Lord of my life. You see, it's this gratitude that keeps me coming to church each week. Even though I'm struggling at the moment, my life still has purpose. I want to serve God. It's only by God's grace I'm here. Luke 12:48, for whom much has been given, much is required in return. This is still a difficult process because my flesh doesn't want to do anything for anyone. Salvation was immediate, but sanctification is a process. And I work my recovery by trying to serve. The root of addiction is definitely selfishness. But I finally figured out God is enough. He has lifted me. He has filled this hole in my soul. I've heard this hole is described like a hole in our sinks, in our kitchens. For stuff like alcohol and drugs and material things passes through like water. It temporarily fills the joy, but it runs right through. However, when this hole was plugged by accepting Christ and being saved, there's like a stopper that's put in the sink. And if you fill your body with godly things, the joy lasts much, much longer. But it still could evaporate, hence the need for Bible reading, going to church, and serving. My father and my best friend, my black lab, Sam, died in 2014, and I handled it much better. And sharing my feelings in small groups really helps out too. Despite the fact I lied, stole, and took advantage of my father, he never gave up on me, and he still loved me. I can't grasp the love he had for me, but it makes me in awe of Father God that he gave his son to die for us. Thank you for sharing my testimony.
Tony coming forward and sharing with us this morning, Lord, and just pray you continue to use him. Susan here at Mountain Springs, Lord, and not only here, Lord, but with those he shares with regularly, with Alicia and Love, and help them through their struggles also, Lord. Just thank you for that, Lord. Lord, be with us as we go to our worship service, Lord. Thank you for what you have there for us, Lord, and I just pray you continue to bless us